This prisoner only does one thing every day, which is to deliberately approach the guards, carefully observing the key on his waist. Then he draws the outline carefully in his cell. He can't make any mistakes, even a small detail. He has to draw it dozens of times, just to be able to replicate the key's appearance. But everything is not over yet. After the guard finished checking the cells, he would light a match. Then he carefully observes the keyhole of the cell door. Then he takes a piece of white paper, carefully press it on it. Then he rubs it back and forth with his hands. In this way, the outline of the lock hole is obtained. But how to know what it looks like inside? The method is very simple. Roll up the paper and slowly insert it. Then use a wooden stick to stir back and forth. In this way, the internal outline of the keyhole is copied. Finally, compare it with the key. Although he has the blueprint, but it's not enough to escape. He still needs to make it in reality. The acquisition of materials became a problem, but the man with an IQ of 150 quickly came up with a solution, which is to make a key from wood. It's hard to get metal in prison, but there was plenty of wood. But his companions laughed at him. A wooden key will break easily. He said that as long as he followed the pattern of the keyhole, it won't break. Seeing their serious attitude, Mark had to agree. They were going to work in the carpentry room today. The man followed the shape of the key. He quickly made a preliminary model. Next, they just need to take it back and polish it. To avoid being discovered by the prison guards, he hid the materials in the kettle. Then he signaled to his computer to attract his partner's attention. He quickly covered the mouth of the bottle with a towel. The prison guards seemed to sense something. The next second, he asked everyone to line up and check the water bottles one by one. You know your look is very intense. I'm sorry. Due to the absorption of the wet towel, the model he hid inside was not poured out. Then the guard shook it twice, seeing that there was indeed nothing inside, and returned it to him. In this way, the man successfully obtained the required materials. Next, he just needs to use a file to grind out the outline of the key, then assemble it with glue. A wooden key was made. The glue was brought by an old prisoner who had been in prison, who helped him get it. Next, it was time to conduct the experiment. He inserted the key into the lock with anticipation when he heard a crisp click inside. The man knew he had succeeded. The next second, he opened the prison door. He breathed the air of freedom, but to escape, this is far from enough. He must make all the keys here. So in the days that followed, whenever he had a chance, he would stare at the keys on the guard's waist, and then firmly remember them in his mind. He needs to make dozens of such keys. He can open all the cells in the prison, and every time he makes a key, he would conduct experiments to ensure the escape plan is foolproof. With the cover of his companion, the man began to try. He would always carry a file with him to modify it on the spot. But this time, an accident happened. The key was accidentally stuck in the keyhole. What's worse, the prison guards came to check the room. He wanted to dig out the sawdust from inside, but it was stuck too tightly. If they found out, the consequences would be unimaginable. His companion quickly threw him a screwdriver. After the man took it, and immediately chiseled frantically at the lock hole. Just then, the fat police officer came over. He quickly pretended to clean up as if nothing happened. Fortunately, the fat police officer was tired from climbing stairs. He didn't come in here, but turned around and went back to rest. Taking this opportunity, he quickly knocked the lock back in place. After doing all this, he managed to escape the crisis. But when another prison guard came to close the door, he found the door couldn't be closed. It was obvious that someone had touched it, but he looked around and found nothing unusual. So he thought the fat guard didn't close it properly. To improve the success rate of the escape, they would practice running from time to time, now that the key is made. But how to open the door from inside the cell? Mark came up with an idea, which was to tie the key to a rope, and then pull it from the other end, and slowly align it with the keyhole. But obviously this method didn't work, because the key couldn't be turned at all. Charlie suggested replacing the rope with a stick, but such a long thing cannot be hidden. The three discussed for a long time, and couldn't come up with any feasible solution. On this day, while the man was working in the workshop, he accidentally saw the old prisoner's turning wheel, and instantly came up with an idea. He made a wheel out of wood, and then fixed the key on it. Then he just needs to stick it out the window, and align it with the keyhole. But after turning it for a long time, but found that the key didn't fit, he had to take it back and modify it with a file. Finally, after several difficult attempts, the man successfully opened the door from inside. He was overjoyed, but at this moment, the prison guard on patrol came over. If he was discovered, he would be doomed. He was about to pull the key out, but accidentally dropped on the ground. What should he do now? Seeing the footsteps of the prison guard approaching him, he suddenly remembered he still had a piece of gum. He quickly put it in his mouth, chewed it quickly, and then stick it on the stick. He wanted to use the stickiness of the gum to get the key back. It was hard to stick it on, but on the way to retrieve it, he was too anxious. He accidentally dropped it on the ground. He had to try again, but because the stick was short, it was difficult for the man to operate. After several attempts, either the key fell to the ground or the gum came loose. Finally, with his continuous efforts and attempts, he successfully retrieved the key. When he took it back, He didn't dare to make any mistakes. He had to be careful with every movement. After successfully getting the key, he quickly lay back on the bed. He was panting heavily and couldn't calm down for a long time. The next day, he told the good news to his companion. They were also happy after hearing it. They decided to scope out the location today to familiarize themselves with the escape route. The old prisoner also promised to help them. Although he didn't think the three could escape, he did it just to protect other prisoners, because once they fail, everyone would suffer. At night, the man first made a dummy and put it on the bed. When the prison guard played the daily music, he quietly opened the cell door. At this time, Mark also came out. Then, he quickly opened the next door with the homemade key. To avoid making noise, they chose to walk barefoot. Soon, they reached the downstairs. There is an iron door here. The man quickly took out the key and tried, but found it wasn't the right one. He had to take out the next key and try again. In such a tense atmosphere, he couldn't help sweating profusely. After several experiments, he finally found the right key. But just as they were about to open the door and go out, they heard the footsteps of the prison guards. He quickly locked the door again and hid in the utility room under the corridor. But the door lock was damaged and could not be closed normally. The man could only use 2 fingers to hold the screw tightly, but the force point was too small, so he couldn't exert much force. Seeing that the fat police officer was at the door, but at this moment, he couldn't hold on anymore and let go. Fortunately, Mark found a wire in time and pulled the wooden door back. They dare not make a sound for fear of being heard. After the fat police officer went upstairs, they quickly took the opportunity to get out. Their experiment was not over yet. In order to be foolproof in the real escape, this kind of adventure is necessary. Every time they open a door, they would mark the corresponding key. The other person was checking the room. Due to the dim light, he didn't notice that the person lying on the bed was a dummy. When the experiment was over, the man quickly locked the door again and hid in the utility room. Just then, the fat police officer had finished checking all the rooms, but as he walked, he noticed a few drops of sweat on the ground. He thought he didn't sweat either. Whose sweat was it? The 2 people in the storage room couldn't stop shaking. If they were discovered, it would be over. Fortunately, the other person looked at the ceiling, thinking it was leaking from above, and wiped it off before leaving. They breathed a sigh of relief. They quietly closed the wooden door and returned to the cell. To prevent the prison guards from surprise inspections, the man took the key apart and put it in the toothbrush cup. Because he stayed up late yesterday, until the alarm clock went off for half an hour, he still hadn't woken up. The prison guard came to check. He realized that he was doomed. Facing the captain's questioning, he couldn't find any reason to answer.
Experience tells me you slept through my bed because you're tired. Why aren't you sleeping?
The man could only keep apologizing. The guard thought there must be something wrong with him, so they started searching. It turned out that everyone overslept. Mark's son's portrait was also forcibly taken away by the guards. No matter how much he begged, the other party refused to return it. He only has half an hour a year to meet his son. If it weren't for his son, he might have given up long ago, so he chose Cantonese. Soon, the man was called in. The captain forbade him to read these boring books, and then angrily threw the toothpaste on the table. The man was extremely nervous, but the more he feared, the more it came. The next second, the other person found the key fragments on the ground, seeing his helpless look, which made the captain more suspicious. What is this? Fortunately, the man was very smart. He instantly came up with a reason, saying it was used to hold photos, which dispelled the captain's doubts. After they left, he quickly covered his mouth, for fear of screaming out in fear. He knew he had to implement the escape plan quickly, otherwise he would be discovered sooner or later. In the days that followed, he would take note of the keys on the guards' belts whenever he could, and then carefully made the excess sawdust. He took the opportunity of tending the vegetable garden and buried them in the soil. At night, he and his companion conducted experiments. In this way, half a year passed. 15 gates. The keys were finally made, to be on the safe side. He also made 24 more, but to escape. This is far from enough. They also need to get a map of the city, so that they can plan an escape route. He asked Xiao Wai, who was in charge of garbage, to get a newspaper for him, which has a map on it. The other party's condition is a pack of cigarettes and a bar of soap. The man made a gesture, indicating the deal was done. The next day, while eating, Xiao Wai sent him a signal, indicating that the newspaper was ready. However, all of this was seen by the prison guard nearby. He quickly ran downstairs to take out the trash, and sure enough, he found the newspaper in the box. Then he put the cigarettes and soap he promised under the box. But the next day, the prison guard suddenly came to tell him Xiao Wai was hanged. If you don't want to end up like him, you better be honest. Hearing this, the man knew he couldn't delay any longer and decided to act tonight. He invited everyone here, hoping that everyone could work together to escape. But the experienced old prisoner knew that they couldn't succeed at all. They would only die if they were caught. He has long been accustomed to life here and didn't want to take the risk, and said that he helped him because they were all prisoners. The other prisoners thought the same. The 3 of them couldn't say anything more, so they had to leave alone. But as soon as they returned to the cell, the prison guards came for a surprise inspection, but still found nothing. After they left, the man immediately opened the cell door and then let Mark and the other 2 out.
It's not too late to come.
Make damn sure you get clear. You hear me?
the three found a corner and changed into the clothes they had prepared. Just then, the fat police officer suddenly came to the storage room. However, he accidentally discovered the wire on the door lock. Meanwhile, the escape team on the other side had already arrived at the iron gate, but when they heard footsteps below, they quickly retreated cautiously until the footsteps disappeared. They dared to come downstairs. They hid in the utility room and prepared to hide from the prison guard's rounds. The man was about to use the wire to fix the door lock. He found it was gone, so he had to choose to hold it with his hands again. But the fat police officer was too fat. He couldn't walk fast at all. He started to pant as soon as he reached the staircase. He took a long time to recover and refused to go up. This really caused him a lot of trouble. Just when he was about to give up, the old prisoner stepped in. He shouted loudly from above, and the prison guard finally led the guy upstairs. The three of them quickly took the opportunity to get out, and then they couldn't wait to open the iron door. After the man opened the next door, Charlie would close the door behind them again. So one of them opened the door, then one closes it. Soon they came to the electric door, feeling that freedom was just ahead. When they came to the workshop, they had a disagreement. Mark thought the door needed a round-headed key, but the man remembered it was flat, so they almost quarreled. Fortunately, Charlie stopped them in time, suggesting that they could just try both. But they tried several keys, and none of them worked. Just then, a door opening sound came from not far away. It was the fat policeman who came back from room check, but the man still hadn't found the key. Mark couldn't stand it anymore, and rushed up to pull him away. The next second, he easily opened the door.
You have to push it all the way in.
Now, there is only one last level left. What's more fortunate is that the outside door is open, and going out is freedom. All three couldn't help but show happy smiles. They hugged tightly, celebrating the victory. But accidents always come so suddenly. The man tried all the keys, but found they were all wrong.
That's the last one we have.
With the last hope, he inserted the key, but after turning it for a long time, the door lock still didn't respond. They realized that the prison guard didn't bring the key to this door with him. What should they do now? Should they go back the same way? They had finally made it here. If they don't go back, they will be shot once caught. Mark knocked on the door panel and found it was hollow. Since it was made of wood, it could be broken, so the next second, he directly picked up the file and smashed it. This scared the other two. Such a big movement is bound to attract attention. But now they can only take a gamble. As Mark's speed increased, their hearts also unconsciously accelerated. Finally, after 10 minutes, the three successfully chiseled the lock. Then, they quickly changed into their casual clothes. When the door was pushed open, they felt like they had been reborn. Just as Mark was about to rush out, he was forcibly pulled back by the two because there were prison guards patrolling above. They could only take advantage of the gap in the guard's tour and quietly walked to the door. After both of them came over, the men followed the map's guidance and began their escape. But Mark and the other two behind were still scared and dare not follow. It all seemed too unreal, but now that it's all over, they had no way out, so they had to follow him. On the road, the three must pretend to be calm and act very naturally, and not to attract the attention of passers-by. Soon, they walked out of the prison's jurisdiction. Then they took a taxi and went to another city. At this time, the prison guards on the other side began to wake up the prisoners, but after he opened all the cells, he found that there was no movement on the man's side. He thought he overslept again. Hey, wake up. Seeing this scene, the old prisoner couldn't help laughing out loud. Unexpectedly, they really succeeded, but at the same time regretted not following them. The three who regained their freedom couldn't contain their joy and couldn't help shouting out, "This is a true story." They were sentenced to prison for opposing racism. After 22 years of escape, their fugitive status was pardoned. Until 1994, Mandela was elected president of South Africa. Racial discrimination gradually disappeared.